My sister and I have never been that close. As kids, we got along fine, but she was 2 years older and thought she knew everything, and at times it could be very annoying. As teenagers, we didn't interact that much. In our early 20s, we tried to be closer, but she was a bit of a know-it-all and looked at me as someone much younger than her, instead of a sister with only a 2-year age gap. We had some more issues when I married first, and then when I didn't tell her about my first loss. She found out a couple of years later. My sister and I ended up pregnant at the same time. She was due 4 weeks ahead of me. 2 days before she gave birth, my baby didn't make it. She showed up at the hospital and offered her support, but was insensitive. She told me to focus on the positive and that her baby was due any day and would be alive and a celebration for the family. She showed back up in my hospital room the day her oldest was born, which was 3 days after I lost mine. I asked her to please leave, but she didn't, and she told me being around my niece would help me heal. My husband had to call a nurse to get her out. I was so broken that I couldn't be happy to see my niece. For the following 2 months, my sister tried really hard to get me to spend time with her and her oldest and focus on them. She had 3 more daughters in the years that followed. I had several losses in that time also. I never met her youngest 2 girls because I avoided any family gathering she would attend. Every single time we were in the same place, she would feel the need to say I could get over my losses with her kids, would feel the need to point out that I didn't need to be a mom because I had her girls. I asked her to stop. My husband asked her to stop, and our brother asked her to stop. She would not stop. She got more insensitive as time went on. She told me I shouldn't be capable of holding so much sadness and grief when her children were in the world. I couldn't emotionally handle it. The whole thing was too much for me. It drove me crazy. I snapped at her once and she acted like I hadn't and proceeded to let me know that her kids should be enough for me. With a lot of help, I became pregnant again at the start of this year and my son was born not too long ago. My sister took it upon herself to show up and tell me I missed out on a decade with her kids, and how could I justify not knowing my flesh and blood, especially when I finally got what I wanted. She called me selfish. I told her she was the reason for that she was insensitive and cruel, always ignoring my boundaries and pushing her kids on me when I was grieving and could not fill the void with her kids. She told me her kids are more than good enough, and how dare I accuse her of being at fault and I'm the selfish one. So, am I the idiot? OMG, well next time you can tell her what she doesn't know is that her kids aren't special to you and will never replace yours, that you hope they're enough for her because it looks like she's trying to get your validation that they're good enough. You are not the idiot and better cut contact with her unless you want your kid to suffer her behavior. She will surely tell your kid her children are better than your child, he's not good enough, you're selfish because of him. OP, are you kidding? You are not the idiot, your sister is. Keep away from her. She is ridiculously narcissistic. Wow, I'm guessing the issue was your loss took away from the attention she expected to get from her birth, so she tried to manipulate you. You should have helped her lose a few teeth a long time ago, then told her not to worry, you still have all your teeth. I'm not a psychologist, but your sister sounds like an epic-level narcissist. Particularly her accusation of selfishness when you finally did have a child seems more like a negative reaction to you succeeding in an area she was holding over you. I'll only put one cautionary note. Remember that her children are not responsible for their mother's behavior. Try to treat them as best you can based on who they are, not their mother. If she's as much of a narcissist as it sounds, they're likely to experience more negativity from her than the endless positives she projects about them to everyone else. At the end of the day, she sounds like she never grew up from having a little sister take away some of her attention. Your sister has what has become known as I am the main character syndrome. She believes that she is the center of existence. Everyone should feel privileged to know her, be around her, and access her progeny. It's ridiculous. The idea that her kids should be enough for you after carrying a child to nearly full term and then having a stillbirth is actually insane. I'm so glad you now have a child of your own, and please don't let your sister ruin it. It is a shame that you don't have a relationship with her children, but I do agree that if facts are how you laid them out, your sister is the reason. She's reaping what she sowed at this point. My boyfriend is female to male transgender. We're both 26 now and have been together since we were 17. We went to the same primary school, the same high school. We've known each other almost all our lives and fell in love young. I've been out as bi since high school. My boyfriend, before transitioning, was out as a lesbian since high school too. However, a couple of years into our relationship, He confided in me a few times about being confused about his gender and that he doesn't feel female and never has. Still, he doesn't think he wants to transition. We've had many deep conversations about this, and I've always been supportive and told him I'll always love him no matter who he is or what he decides to do. Last July, he finally told me he wanted to transition. Again, I was supportive and so proud of him, and have been there for him every step of the way. I defended him against others, took him clothes shopping, went with him for his first haircut. I offered to do this, but he wanted it done professionally, and cared for him while he was recovering from his top surgery. I did it all with him, and he wanted me there. He's always had a close group of male friends. He's just always been the kind of person who gets along better with men. He does have female friends too, but most of them are male, and since transitioning, to be more specific, since his top surgery, he's acting differently. Not like I'm finally myself different, like idiot different. He's turned into the kind of man I cannot stand. Misogynistic, gross behavior, gross jokes, embarrassing me in front of his friends. He's become a Saturdays are for the boys kind of man, and I hate it. This is not who I fell in love with. He's never acted like this. Multiple times I've had to tell him not to speak to me like that, not to do that, not to say that, and not to joke about that. All I get in response is, "Don't police what I say or do," or "Stop trying to control me." He refers to me as woman when any of his friends are at our house. He tells me to get back in the kitchen, and if I don't, he has lines of girls waiting for him. Yesterday, he had his friend over and told me to make him and his friend a sandwich and get them some beers. I said, "No, do it yourself. I'm not your slave." He snapped at me and said, "No, but you're my woman and I expect you to act like it." All the built-up anger and frustration and hurt came up, and I snapped back at him and told him, "Well, you're my man, so I'd expect you to act like it rather than a little boy. Your behavior is grossing me out." His friend decided to leave after this. My boyfriend and I had a huge blow-up argument about how he's been treating me, and he accused me of being phobic, not accepting him for who he is, not being there for him. So I kicked him out. I told him if he wanted to act like a boy, if he wanted someone to mother him, he could go to his mother's and stay there. Since then, I've had texts from his mother telling me she always knew I was no good for him. I should accept who he is. This is coming from the woman who tried to stop my boyfriend from transitioning, as she feared it would be an embarrassment to the family, and she said to us that our family is not a circus. I still love him. We've spent most of our lives knowing each other and half of our lives in love. I don't want to throw this relationship away, so maybe what I said was too harsh, and I could have said it better, but I honestly don't know how else to approach this. Has this happened to anyone else? Am I the idiot for saying this and being upset, or is this a phase that most transgender people go through? Not the idiot. However, it's understandable that your boyfriend's transition is a complex process, but it doesn't excuse disrespectful behavior. Your feelings are valid, but it's crucial to communicate openly about the impact of his actions on your relationship. Seek understanding and compromise together, and consider professional guidance for both is needed. Well, she isn't phobic, she just doesn't like misogyny. It's amazing how these labels are weaponized to allow people to get away with crappy behavior without criticism. But yeah, if a rational discussion does nothing to change his behavior, leave. You deserve a relationship that doesn't tear you down at every opportunity. Darling, you're not throwing anything away, he is. He's become misogynistic and condescending towards you. He's accusing you of being anti-trans after all of your continuous support on his journey is ironic, at the least, and so hurtful. You can love him for the journey and memories. You don't need to become his servant. He's become something no woman wants to be with, which is twisted. I hope you find someone who respects and values you and doesn't just want to use you as a doormat. My 27 female husband, Eli, 28 male, has 2 sisters and his brother, the youngest Ryan, 20. Ryan is a 6'4" but skinny little thing, gets treated like a baby and is extremely quiet. Everyone starts conversations with him 100% of the time, and he replies with one-word answers without looking up, and they all constantly ask if he's okay. He speaks monotone and it gets agitating. I'm not sure he even knows what I look like, even though he's seen me so much. We visited Eli's family for dinner yesterday evening. Ryan was seated in front of me. Eli asked him how he was, and he just smiled and nodded. I had enough and thought it was rude, but I didn't lash out. I calmly asked Ryan if he was going to reply. He just stared at me, so I said, "Hello?" The whole time Eli kept nudging and glaring at me, and then I said, "I think it's a bit rude that you don't answer when spoken to. in a light-hearted tone. To my surprise, Ryan walked off crying and Eli told me to shut up. Luckily, the rest of his family was in the kitchen. He's never spoken to me like that before, and the rest of the dinner was awkward. When we came home, Eli told me not to speak to Ryan again and that I was the one who was being rude. I disagree. Am I the idiot for making my brother-in-law cry even though he was being rude? You are the idiot. Ryan responded by smiling and nodding his head. That is an acknowledgement that he heard and a response. Nobody is required to answer you back when you talk to them, whether they are ND or NT. Insisting on verbal conversation when the other person has clearly indicated they're not interested in it is rude. OP is a bully and narcissistic. They remind me of all the worst people I've met who have said stuff like this to me or others just because we didn't give the perfect reaction they wanted, or have anxiety or whatever, and they don't view it as a real thing, and they think we should just act like we don't have it. OP, it sounds like you were just looking to start crap, and if I were you, I'd tell you to shut up too. How can you be so socially oblivious that you don't see that this guy is dealing with social difficulties? At best, he's extremely shy, and at worst, he might be dealing with something like autism. Either way, it's completely idiotic to criticize someone for struggling with something like that. You aren't his parent. It's not your job to educate him. You were the only person who had a problem with this. Everyone else was fine. I don't even blame the kid, really. With your attitude, I wouldn't want to talk to you either. I, 28 female, really struggled as a teenager. I lost my mother suddenly when I was 14 and that affected my mental health. I became very introverted and left school with no real friends. I was teased a lot for various reasons, but mostly because I was sulky and never had new things. I had the same pencil case, coat and bag from 12 to 18. To make matters worse, I had a form teacher, I think that's like homeroom in America, who was always trying to be friends with the popular kids, and therefore joined in on teasing me for my appearance and demeanour, and just generally made me feel awful about myself. Having few childhood friends, I was always really close to my father, 53. That started to shift as I grew up. I've since moved away and have 2 sons. I've seen my father twice since 2020 and he visited to see my sons on both occasions. Despite this, we talk and FaceTime multiple times weekly and he tells me about his dog and life. I know he's been seeing someone since late 2021 and she and her 2 sons recently moved in with him, but I hadn't met her. In a terrible turn of events, I ran into my father at a supermarket. Nowhere near where I live, we were visiting my partner's family, and my father happened to be there to drive his partner's son to a rugby match, and found out that his partner is the teacher that encouraged the class to bully me in school. Since then, she's been divorced, so her surname is different. I never knew her first name, so I had no way of knowing this was her. To say I was mortified is an understatement. I don't think she recognized me, but it was very awkward, mostly on my end. She spent most of the time fussing with her keys. But she's living in my father's house with pictures of me as a child, so I imagine she must know who I am by now if she remembers me. My father is trying to arrange a big Christmas get-together for our family. Since we haven't spent Christmas with him since 2019, he's desperate for me and my sons to be there, but I have no interest in spending any time with this woman. I've explained to him multiple times why, but he thinks my sons and I will love her if we get to know her. But to me, this is an adult who made an already difficult part of my life even worse to impress a group of 14-year-olds. My partner supports my decision not to attend, but I can tell it hurts my father. I know that this might be stupid or immature, that it's been 10 years since I saw her last, and I could make small talk for my father's sake, but I also know that I shall just be uncomfortable the entire time. I'd hope never to see this woman again, and now she's living with my father. I know I should probably grow up and make peace with it, but whenever I think about seeing her, I just remember how awful she made me feel for 4 years as a grieving teenager. My father says not to dwell on the past, but I just don't think this is something I can forgive. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. She knows who you are. She recognized you. Your father would have told her all about you. I wouldn't let her around my children either, and I wouldn't be uncomfortable at dinner for the sake of your father. You did that for 4 years and he wants you to do it for 20 plus more? Heck no. I agree, her fumbling with keys to get away wasn't a coincidence. I can't imagine if she didn't know who you were and realized this was the first time to meet and make a good impression on her partner's daughter that she would have made more of an introduction of herself to you. She was avoiding you because she did and didn't want to face you. Guilty conscience. Really, I can't see a way past this to heal without starting with an apology from her, an acknowledgement of the hurt her role caused you. I also feel like your dad has been and continues to be negligent of your feelings, both back then and now. If you want to have a relationship with your father, see and talk to him on your terms and location. If that doesn't work for you, cut him out of your life. You should make peace with it for yourself. You don't need to make peace with her, or see her, or pretend it's all okay. OP, you're wrong about one thing though. I know I should probably grow up and make peace with it. As a grown woman, you are making your boundaries clear. This is the right behavior. Just because your dad decided to have your bully in your life doesn't mean you must follow his lead. You're a separate person from him. Also, how can you know she won't bully your kids now? Or she won't keep treating you the same? You can't. That's not a safe place for your family. Your dad is picking his pleasure over you. Move on without him.